Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rashbi, Rav Shmuel ben Yehoshua, Rabbi Stephen Epstein, with this week's 10-minute Torah, which is Bereshit. And we are starting from the beginning. We're starting up on 5785. And we are now doing the third triennial portion. That is, in most cases, not all, there's a few exceptions. But for the most part, we will be reading the final third of each portion. So, hope you are having some good high holidays. We are still in the midst of it. Now, when most people think of the high holidays, they typically think of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the 10 days of awe in between. And, that's fairly typical. If you want to get technical, the high holidays run from the 1st of Elul, that's the month previous to Rosh Hashanah, the 1st of Tishrei, and it goes all the way to Simchat Torah. So it's a period of almost 2 months. So why such an extended time? Or what's the difference? Well, the time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is really kind of the thick of it. That's when you're really getting down and you're really thinking about what you've done and how you can improve and, better ways to live life. The rest of it is kind of a lead up. That whole month is a lead up when we're reciting Psalm 27 every morning and every evening. And then past Yom Kippur, yes, we're asking to be sealed in the book of life, having asked to be inscribed in the book of life. And it goes through Sukkot, Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day of assembly, and also into Simchat Torah. Shemini Atzeret is sort of a misunderstood holiday. Now, it says in the Torah, on the 8th day, you will assemble. No work is to be done. It's that important. But what is it? Is it part of Sukkot still, or is it something else? Well, the way the sages describe it, if you look at the offerings throughout Sukkot, it's typically the same except for the bulls. First day is 13, then 12 throughout the 7 days. And when you add up all the amount of bulls that are offered are 70. Well, there were 70 ancient nations. So in a sense, we're making offerings for each one of the ancient nations. Shemini Atzeret is, okay, the party's broken up, everybody's leaving, but the guest says to us, to Israel, stick around. I just want to have a little bit more time with you. And that's kind of the understanding of Shemini Atzeret. So moving right along, two things. I would like to thank all the men, all the people that participated in putting up our Sukkot. Putting up a Sukkot is so much fun. It's just a wonderful time. And then when you sit in there after having put it up, it's such a sense of peace and contentment. It's just such a beautiful thing to do and such a beautiful holiday. It's the Jewish Thanksgiving. And we're giving thanks for our bounty, but maybe we're also giving thanks for God's generosity to us throughout the year, helping us meet our challenges. Life would be kind of boring if we didn't, do anything. I mean, we're here to grow. That's what life's all about. So God kind of helps us. The second thing I want to mention before talking about Bereshit is Israel is still in the midst of conflict, and we can't forget that. These are our brothers and sisters. In this country, we're in the midst of a conflict, a different conflict. We have people very open about being anti-Semitic, lumping in this word Zionism, like wanting to go back to our ancestral lands, a crime. People ignore the fact that the UN voted to give us back our land. It was offered to be a joint state between Arabs and the indigenous Arabs and the Jews. The indigenous Arabs rejected it. They adopted the word Palestine, which, by the way, has been what that land's been called for 2,000 years before it was renamed Israel, the modern state of Israel. But we want our independence, never again. And if we have to fight, we'll fight. We don't want to, but we're not going to allow ourselves to be oppressed or persecuted anymore. With that, let's switch gears and let's talk about the creation of the universe. Now, I've mentioned before in Bereshit that if you look at the modern theory of the origin of the universe, and as you can see, I'm wearing white yarmulke, white shirt, people call it the Big Bang, that there was nothing, nothingness, whatever that nothing was. Was it a vacuum? Was there an actual space? Was there absolutely nothing? And then all of a sudden, bam, there was the sound and wham, that's the Big Bang. And within a matter of microseconds, matter started to become created, and then it started to form over eons, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at the first chapter of Genesis, I challenge you not to look at it with this theory in mind and say, the ancients knew this all along. Now, perhaps in the future, they will find another reason or another method, another explanation of the origin of the universe. But for now, science seems to go with Torah. And why shouldn't it? Right? Okay. Let's look at this year's triennial portion, the last third of Bereshit, and let's look at what the implications are, because this kind of fascinated me. I discovered this last year when I was doing some private study with a family, and we looked at the Hebrew words, we looked at the flow. So years ago, Rabbi Ishmael, one of the rabbis that commented on the Talmud, developed 13 methods of analyzing Torah. Now, when we look at Torah, we don't do it because we're questioning it. We're looking at the validity. No, we want to understand. This is our way to God. By looking into Torah, and right, we have physical, finite bodies and brains, and we can't really conceive of God's plan, but we can certainly approach it, and we can certainly look at some of the nuances and integrate some of the principles into our life. So, chapter 5 and part of chapter 6, which forms the triennial cycle, talks about how God created humankind. And it was Adam, we go through a lineage. And then we start to talk about how the B'nai Elohim took wives from Batot Adam. So if you interpret that the way people usually interpret, it would suggest that the sons of gods, Elohim, took wives from the daughters of mankind. Elohim, yes, is a generic term for God. It's a word we use for God, Adonai Elohim. And when we say that, Adonai is God's metaphorical right hand of mercy. Elohim is God's left hand of justice and judgment. Okay? So Elohim can mean God with a small g, but if it's the aspect of judgment, then it could mean somebody in charge who is meting out justice. Back then, kings and princes, they were in charge. They made the laws. They did what they wanted to do, right? There was really no challenge. It's not like today in our country, we have the three branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial, that are checks and balances on each other. There were no checks and balances. What the king or the prince or the noble said, that's the way it was. So when you grow up with that proverbial silver spoon in your mouth, you basically feel privileged, like you can do what you want and get away with it because daddy is going to have your back. So if you have daughters of commoners and they don't have a choice, it's not like today you go on a date, you ask a girl to go out, she says no. It's like, okay, you can maybe try again, or maybe, give up and say, okay, on to the next, prospect. Back then, a man wanted a woman as wife, he just basically took her. And God was angry. Now, if you notice, this is at the tail end of Bereshit. One of Rabbi Ishmael's principles was the flow. It was the flow. It was the sequence of events. So this comes right before our next portion of Noah, where God says, man is evil, I'm going to destroy it. There you go. This is why God rained the floods. At least it's my interpretation. Somebody may disagree with that, and that's fine. But I think you would be hard-pressed to deny that at least it's one of the contributing events, one of the contributing situations as to what made God look at mankind and say, there's no respect here. especially man against woman. Men are abusing women. They're doing what they want. They're not respecting who they are. They're not making laws in according to justice. So man's evil. They're just doing what they want, and they're not even bothering to rationalize it. They're just doing it. Man is evil. Not quite. You might say, well, how do you reconcile the fact that we were creating God's image and now we're evil? Let me leave you with this. There is a part of God, again, that's part of justice. Now, it's very easy to turn that into vengeance and vindictiveness. That's why God has justice and mercy. So the two come together so that we can be judged in a fair way. So you can use good for evil. Think about it. We always want to err on the side of fairness and justice. What would God do, right? What would God want us to do? That's the image in which we're created. That's why we have free will. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, good Yontif. Hope you are sealed in the book of life. And thank you as again for watching and listening.